Hey, what's up, Superdads? So I'm here to talk to you about strength standards and how they're stupid, and you should not pay attention to them. Here's my challenge to you fitness influencers out there who are pushing strength standards as something that people consuming your content should be paying attention to. Why don't you go dunk a basketball? Now, I know that almost none of you will be able to do this because most of you are like 5'7", 5'8", something like that. And you're, most of you are thickly muscled. You're going to weigh far too much in order to jump high enough. You probably don't have big enough hands to do it. But the same arguments can all be made about strength standards regarding bench press or deadlift or squats or whatever exercise you want to choose. There are physical realities that come into play that make those strength standards just unrealistic and nonsense for a large swath of people. And putting them out, purporting them as though they were some sort of non-arbitrary, meaningful distinction between whether it's beginners and intermediates or something like that, you're doing a lot more damage than I think you know, and I want you to stop. Okay, now you might say, well, sure, your metaphor about the dunking a basketball might be accurate for something like an what absolute strength standard, like bench pressing 315 or something like that. But what about relative strength standards? What about, strength standards like, intermediate lifters can squat 1.5 times their weight or something like that? Well, there are no fewer problems with those sorts of strength standards because once again, a person's physical realities, their physiology, their anthropometry are going to be of crucial importance in determining whether that strength standard is a realistic and sensible one for them or not. And the problem is not whether it's a absolute standard or a relative standard, it's that it's a normative standard where you are applying it to everybody, where you're calling it a standard, right? If it was individualized standards, then sure, that might make a little bit of sense, but it's not. It's not. It's a standard. So if I were to say, okay, fine, every healthy male should be able to vertical jump half of their height. Well, if you're 7 foot tall, you have to vertical jump 3.5 feet, which is a very sizable vertical jump, in case you're not aware. But if you're a Smurf, that's like, a couple inches. Hey, does that mean that the Smurf has a better vertical jump ability than the 7-footer? Okay, so you can see how absurd it is. All right, now why are these strength standards so problematic? One is by having strength standards, you're encouraging people to try dumb things and get injured. Because when they can't reach the standard, easily or quickly, they're going to keep trying things, ever more unorthodox methods to get there because they're frustrated with their inability to get to the standard. And because it's a standard, they think that it should be attainable to them. And these ever more unorthodox methods, they're going to lead to injury. Technique is also a big problem. If you make something like an absolute amount of weight lifted the standard that people need to achieve, then that metric becomes the goal rather than a metric of progression, where progression is the actual goal. No, the metric becomes the goal, and people begin to sacrifice all of the other things. And the first one to go is often technique. And again, this leads to injuries. It's a waste of time for many people, right? You could spend, you know, hours banging your head against the wall of trying to get to a 315-pound bench press and make, very little incremental progress and never actually reach it. And a lot of that time would represent time basically just put into a fruitless endeavor, which in turn will lead to a less developed game overall. And I say game to bring us back to the metaphor of dunking a basketball. If I take a 5'7" basketball player who loves the game and I tell them that the standard is to be able to dunk a basketball, and they spend hours and hours working on trying to dunk a basketball, they are not going to be spending that time on their passing, on their court sense, on their handles, on their three-point shooting, all of the other things that they could potentially excel at and that would raise their overall game and make them a better player. So as somebody interested in building strength and muscle, you should take that same mentality. Find the things that you have a predilection for, that you are naturally inclined to be successful at, and invest in those. You're going to get much higher return on those. Should you also hedge your weaknesses, fill in those areas? Absolutely. But investing a tremendous amount of time in the areas where you're weak will provide less return than if you put it in the places where you are naturally strong. Okay. It's also the normative. I brought this up previously, but the normative nature of strength standards is demotivating, and this speaks to the point we're going to get to next. It's actually demotivating because when people can't get to a standard, they think that there's something wrong with them, that it doesn't work for them, and it drives away more people than I think you would imagine. It's not something that makes them try harder, work harder, maybe for a time, but for the large portion of individuals who aren't able to reach whatever your arbitrary standard is, it's demotivating. And they'll think, well, I'm obviously not cut out for this. Okay, and that pushes them away. I think that the reason, and in fact, I've even heard people say this, that the reason why they push these strength standards is because, well, I mean, in a sporting context, in a competitive context like powerlifting or Olympic lifting or something like that, it actually makes some sense because it's a way to distinguish between what level of competition you should be competing in, right? Are you an amateur, and or are you at a professional level? So there is some sense in that, but for non-competitive, people who lift for health and strength and aesthetics, just as normal gym goers, I think the reason that it gets shoved onto them as well is because people think that other people just want to make excuses to not work hard. That things like, when I talk about physiology or I talk about genetic limitations, people just hear that as me going blah blah blah, excuse, blah blah blah. Here's another excuse why I can't, be better or improve. And that boils down to you lying to try to motivate people, lying to them that this is an attainable strength standard for the entire population. I mean, that's a lie. And I just don't think it's a great idea to lie to people in hopes of motivating them. That will almost always boomerang back and not just hurt them, but hurt you. It might take a while, but I just think that's the nature of reality. It betrays a sort of anthropessimism or a pessimistic view of people, where people are just looking for excuses to be lazy and avoid hard work. And if you treat people that way, you will create that behavior, which brings us to that point that I previously stated about the normative nature of strength standards being something that in the long run demotivates people and drives them away because they think I'm not cut out for this. Clearly, I'm not able to work hard enough, even though they might be working tremendously hard and they might be doing everything right. And so you end up getting the thing that you are trying to avoid because you're acting out of fear and you're acting out of pessimism. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, essentially. So what I would encourage people to do is be realistic about what you can control and what you can't, how far your influence extends. If you are a 6'5" person like I am, who is naturally very willowy or wiry, attempting to get a strength standard for a squat or a deadlift will potentially and just end up in more injuries than achieving that standard was ever worth. But there are definitely ways that you can get way stronger and build a lot more muscle. You can't change your anthropometry. Unless you want to get surgery to remove portions of your legs, you're not going to get shorter. Obviously, that would be absurd. Focus on what you can control, and that is one of those things is just making progress in consistent ways. And it doesn't always have to be by adding weight to the bar. It could be improving your technique. It could be becoming more connected, more muscularly proficient in terms of your mind-muscle connection. It could be being more mindful. It could be getting through the workout a little bit quicker and thereby upping the intensity. There are so many ways. But the one way that is always under your control is this. Training, resistance training, is a fantastic way to strengthen your character. And stay with me here for a second, but choosing to do something difficult, to willingly not only accept but seek out and engage with discomfort is like the bedrock, is like the core of character development. And so going to the gym or wherever it is that you train, it has the capacity to make you a better person each time you do it. But trying to live up to somebody else's imposed and arbitrary standards for your physical development will only curtail that character development. And that would be a real shame, because in the end, that's what matters. The muscle and the strength will go with time and with age. In the end, what you have is the kind of person that you showed up as and became during your tenure on this planet. So everything else is sort of secondary. If you're pushing yourself and you're working hard, you will notice the gains in how you show up in life. And if you're going to hold yourself to any sort of standard, that is the kind of standard that I would encourage you to consider. All right, thank you so much for your attention, everybody. I really do appreciate it. And to those who like and comment and share and anything like that, you really do have my appreciation. Okay, take it easy, everyone. Go be super.